This is one of the very few places in the English Bible where Satan's name is even hinted at, and even this is more a description than it is a name. Lucifer, Latin for light bearer, is Hallel in the Hebrew, meaning shining one, morning star, or day star. The word upon which it's based, halal, is a verb that on one end of the spectrum means to shine, flash forth light, or praise, but it also means to boast, make into a fool, or act like a madman. But forget the name. It's far more important that we know Satan's character. He's our adversary, our accuser. Considering the fact that the Creator's name is repeated 7,000 times in Scripture, it's a sad commentary indeed that so many people recognize the name Lucifer while so few know the self-revealed name of the true and living God, Yahweh. Anyway, with diplomacy and tact, the Antichrist will eloquently explain who saved him from the assassin. He will describe this God of light who has performed such a remarkable sign. He won't refer to him as Satan, though, for to him he's not the adversary, but the ally. He'll call him by a name he prefers, Lucifer, or perhaps Allah. And then he'll call upon the world to join him in worshiping his God, the one who restored his life. Again, we'll see a blatant satanic counterfeit. As Christians worship Yahweh through his resurrected Messiah, Yahshua, the Antichrist will be demanding that the world worship Lucifer through himself. I personally have a hard time comprehending how anybody could fall for this. But then again, Satan has an impressive track record of persuading people with disastrously illogical but brilliantly packaged arguments. I mean, look at Islam. Give Muslims booty or promise them a paradise filled with virgins and low-hanging fruit, and they'll follow you anywhere, even to hell. Whether or not Satan is actually responsible for bringing the Antichrist back to life is a matter of conjecture. I don't know if Yahweh has given him the ability to do that, and that's what it would take, God-given ability. The prophetic record is rather ambiguous on this point. It could just as easily be sleight of hand, like he wasn't really dead, or demonic possession and reanimation of his corpse. We aren't given enough information to be dogmatic, but we do know one thing for sure: the whole world buys it.
So they worship the dragon,
named Lucifer,
who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And who is given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies? He was given authority to continue for 42 months." Revelation 13:4 and 5.
The cat, as it were, is out of the bag. The inhabitants of Earth now know who they're dealing with. As the Rolling Stones put it, without having a clue as to how terrifyingly close to reality they'd stumbled, their devil says, "Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste." The one John calls the dragon is now, perhaps for the first time ever, presented to the world openly. And the Antichrist? The people won't call him the beast, of course. He'll be spoken of in the most glowing and flattering of terms. There is to be no more ambiguity. Satan will no longer hide behind religion and petty distractions. It's time for a showdown. The world must choose between Yahweh and Lucifer, or whatever he decides to call himself. I don't really understand why, but Yahweh has allotted a full 3.5 years, basically the entire second half of the tribulation period, for Satan to rule the earth in person through the Antichrist. Perhaps it's his sense of fair play. He doesn't want anyone coming to him later and whining, "I was tricked. I didn't understand what was going on. It all happened so fast." Everyone will understand that they're making a conscious choice. You're either for Yahweh or against him. For once in their lives, they'll get the candidate they voted for. This period, 3.5 years, or 42 months, or 1,260 days. Remember, we're still using the prophetic year reckoning of 360 days. is referred to many times in Scripture, though the last half of the tribulation is not always perfectly coterminous with every 1260-day period. We'll see it described again by Daniel later in this chapter. If you thought the first half was bad, thermonuclear war, environmental disaster, the death of a third of the Earth's oceans and a quarter of its population, then you're in for a shock. It's all downhill from here.
Then he, the Antichrist, opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And authority was given over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him, those whose names have not been written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the set-apart ones. Revelation 13:6-10.
John concludes the passage by giving us a bird's-eye view of the final 42 months of the history of mankind. We see several things that distinguish this period of time. First, the Antichrist is in complete control of the whole earth now, not just the Balkans, Europe, or the lands he was able to overrun in the opening days of World War III. Second, he is now openly blaspheming Yahweh and everything and everyone associated with his kingdom. He can't touch the raptured saints, of course, but he goes out of his way to attack all that they stood for. Two groups find themselves in his crosshairs: the Jews, whose incredible national epiphany we'll explore in a future chapter, and the new Christians, the Neo-Ecclesia, whose Gentiles have belatedly chosen to follow Yahshua after the rapture, the fellowship of repentant Laodicea, if you will. Third, now that Satan has come out of the closet, the world is divided into two, and only two, camps: those who are Yahweh's children and those who worship Satan. The ramifications are stunning. This means that all of the world's religions, excluding the reverence for Yahweh, which, as we have observed, is not really a religion at all, but rather a relationship between God and his people, all of them come to terms at some level with the fact that their God is actually Lucifer. This has always been the reality, although concealed beneath a cloak of secrecy and false identities, from Baal, Merodach, and Chemos, to Diana, Zeus, and Apollo, to Shiva, Vishnu, and Allah, to the pitiful dead caricature of Yahshua so many settle for in today's apostate world. But note that Yahweh has known all along who were his, for their names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, even these latecomers. Yes, they're going to experience a few very tough years, but God's eye is on his children. The Antichrist may kill their bodies, for this is Satan's moment in the sun, but he can't touch their souls, because their spirits are forever linked with that of the eternal living God. That, however, brings up an interesting question. We've seen two of Satan's most influential tools, Islam and Catholicism, get pummeled during the first half of the tribulation. Does that mean the devil is fighting against himself? Doesn't he have an interest in perpetuating the lie? No, not anymore. The answer gets to the heart of his real agenda. Throughout the history of man, Satan has apparently been content to seduce people away from Yahweh. But he wants more. He wants to be worshipped as himself, as Lucifer, the light-bearer, something that has always been a rare phenomenon in this world. Satan has always had to use surrogates, substitutes, gods with other names who were nothing but figments of the imagination, gods who had been given substance by priests and sculptors, or more recently by advertising agencies. He has never really wanted man to believe that there is no God. What he has desired, rather, was for man to believe there was no Yahweh. Satan's greatest yearning from day one has been for man to worship him openly for who he thinks he is, Lucifer, or Allah, not Mary and a gaggle of saints, or even a phony caricature of a Jesus who bears no resemblance to the Yahshua of history in heaven. Only Lucifer, alone and glorified, Halal the boaster. You've got 3.5 years, big guy. Knock yourself out. You just said,
I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High.
Just remember what the real God said through his prophet when he described you.
You shall be brought down to Sheol, the lowest depths of the pit. Isaiah 14:14 and 15.
A few chapters back, if you'll recall, I concluded from the convoluted evidence in Revelation 17 that the Antichrist would be possessed by the same demon that inhabited the twisted Roman Emperor Nero. But the disasters of the tribulation's first half were precipitated by the actions of one who, as far as I can tell, wasn't necessarily demon-possessed. Yes, the Antichrist was following Satan's plan to the letter, and yes, his intrigues resulted in the unmitigated horrors unleashed upon the earth. But what he did and why he did it speaks of a garden-variety megalomaniac on the order of a Mussolini or Saddam, albeit a really clever one, who's getting lots of satanic assistance. Now, as we approach the 3.5-year mark, we perceive a quantum leap in evil. I believe that it is here, in the Antichrist's apparent return from the dead, that we see the demon of Nero take over his persona. Not that he's an unwilling participant. He has consciously sold his soul in exchange for unlimited temporal power. When John states matter-of-factly that
it was granted to him to make war with the set apart and to overcome them, Revelation 13:7.
He's announcing that things are about to get worse. Much worse. The overt persecution is about to begin, and those who aren't specifically sealed, that is, every follower of Yahshua now on the earth except for the 144,000 Jewish messengers, will suddenly be faced with two choices: run and hide, or stay and die. There will be no more pretense of religious or political tolerance, no more gently coaxing cautious Jews into his camp through favors and concessions, no more lenience for dissenting opinion. From now on, the name of the game is submission. Of course, the whole thing will be couched in politically correct terms. For the greater good of society at large, the anarchy must be reined in. The benefits of the new worldwide system of law and order will far outweigh the inconveniences. We must all pull together in this great endeavor. We can and will forge a bright new tomorrow from the ashes of yesterday's failures. Good grief. It is not without significance that John's whole discussion of the Antichrist's new openly satanic agenda comes upon the heels of a symbolism-rich recap of the history and prophecy of these days. We, too, should pause and get our bearings.
Now a great sign appeared in the heaven, and a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars.
The woman is Israel. Her garland is her 12 tribes, and the sun in which she is enrobed represents the glory of Yahweh. Could the moon under her feet be Islam's crescent and the greater counterfeit he represents? The symbol certainly fits. Here again we are reminded that Isaiah 14's Halal ben Shakar, rendered Lucifer son of the dawn, aspires to be mistaken for Yahweh, the true light, but throughout history he has had to masquerade as something else, a mere reflection, as the moon's light is of the sun.
Then, being with child, she cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. She bore a male child, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Revelation 2:1 and 2, also verse 5.
The only child destined to rule like this is Yahshua. His human roots and destiny are outlined here. The in-between stuff is left out. Of special interest is the word translated caught up. Harpazo in Greek, the same word Paul used to describe the eventual rapture of those who would follow him.